Guten Abend.
Guten Abend, Michael.
So let's
okay?
see. I'm fine. I'm fine. Steve is here. Justin is here. Manch is not here, but he's here. Now he's 6,000 miles away again. Hey, Manch. Cool to see you. Drum, Rick, Fabio, David, sorry. Andy, Bjart, Testbild sehr. Testbild sehr, Dave? Which language? Winston, Daniel, Bearded, Marvin. Okay, nice start.
I like Bearded SXL.
Me too, by the way. And I was so happy and surprised that he is in German.
He'll like some of the stream this evening because I'm going to be talking about some sort of bit of mad classical stuff going on. I'm sure he'll enjoy it very much.
Yeah, that's right on point. But before we get into, you also said to me pre-stream, and I can't wait for that you also will go into a little bit of decoding Deutsche Grammophon editions.
Yes, yeah, I'm gonna, I like to do my little educational sections. So there's so much I need to make sure that I keep up on those. So we're going to touch on just looking at some early DG stereo records and how you can tell what's what. I'm also going to do this.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong. Just for the Deutsche Grammophon classical part. If you say, "Oh yeah, but I'm not so interested in Deutsche Grammophon," then please consider that those things from the classical records are also very important when it comes to every other genre or label, because at that time, with those records, they started all of this insanity. No, that's not fair to say.
You're right. Also, looking at DG, they put out thousands of records. Like there's loads, but we're going to be going back to sort of again looking at the golden era of stereo. So we're talking that late 50s, early 60s period, and they put out some really great material. And yeah, it's just nice to know when you know what to look for. They're kind of easy to spot because if you see a big box, if you see a shelf of DG, they're really easy to spot because they've got all the little. I won't get into it now. I will get into it, but I'm going to talk about that and how then you can get a bit deeper. And I'm going to do the same for Mercury as well, looking at the stereos. The British ones, obviously, the Mercury's, there's the American label, but I'm going to be looking at the British ones of those which are really lovely sounding records, very warm. And they're lovely. And they're a bit, again, when you compare them to what I consider the big labels, the really expensive stuff, they're really good value, right? For what they are. So a bit of that. I'm going to be a little bit, jumping around into these things, but where I'm going to start, because we've been doing a lot of electronic, I wanted to start off just with a 10-minute electronic thing again, just because I listed some very nice things, you see. And
I saw them in the OBC or at the OBC shop. There are some major titles which really need some explanation, and that's cool.
So people know what they are, because for me, I put up a couple of what I consider to be grails for this, and I just want to explain people why they are. So you've got context. Context is important with all of this that we do, isn't it?
Absolutely. Without context, sometimes it's not understandable. The context is essential in my opinion.
And because we've been, I've been really enjoying doing all this electronic stuff. It's really, I was chatting with Stunty about it as well. It's just like sort of digging through all these old, finding all these old boxes that I haven't looked in for, 10 over a decade, some even more, like 15 years. And you find this thing that, I look and I go, I don't remember buying that. But then it's something really good, and I'm like, yes, I'm pleased that I bought, and you sort of realize there's all this stuff. Yeah, great things. But what I'm going to with,
I love the sentence when it comes to records. There is all this stuff.
There's a lot of stuff. Yeah, there is a lot of stuff. And talking stuff, so I'm going to start with I had two of these, so I put one in the shop. Yeah, now this is the very first Cybertron 7-inch on Deep Space Records from 1981. Yeah. Now, this is Alleys of Your Mind, backed with Cosmic Rain Dance on the B-side. Now, the reason this is a stream, I mean, this is a grail, yeah, a real grail.
Why, Dave? Why?
Because it's the first record by Warren Atkins from Detroit, who's sort of seen as the godfather of Detroit techno. Now, there's a bit of a debate between this and the 12-inch called Shivari, which I've talked about before, and I actually had someone was very shrewd and bought that from the shop, because I only had, that's another super grail. Now, there's always been a debate between that and this record as to who was the first. Now, Shivari came out a bit before this, but we're only talking a matter of a few weeks, maybe 3 months, something like that. But there's a bit of a debate because that's a bit disco-y, yeah, whereas this is hardcore techno. Well, not I say hardcore techno, not in the sense of people think boom boom hardcore techno. I mean, this is seen as a purist techno record by Warren Atkins, who was listening to Kraftwerk, and this is what they put out. Now, this is
I have to interrupt because please don't think of me as a rude person, but I think there's something very important too. And for you, this is so obvious that you might not think that this is worth mentioning. Those records, at the time when they put them out, it's not that you go to your London record store and say, oh, please give me the 7. How did you get your hands on those records at the time?
Well, so I'll just dig out, because I know that we covered this, but I'll for the explaining. So we've got this one that I've shown before, the Shivari number of names. Now, apparently this one, they only made it available. It was just available in Detroit, and even, at the clubs, at the club, the main club, where they were playing this record.
So in a way, like I did with bands at the concert. So here you get it at the club.
Yeah, it was kind of like that. It wouldn't have had any sort of form of what we would consider distribution. It would have been a local thing, and very much the same for this record. It was put out on a record, so they put this out so it could be played out. A DJ could, they all, by the way, they all came. You can see that the center is taken out. Every single version, I'll show you, because I've got a few. I've got a white label of it. There. They're all like this. I mean, these are records that I didn't just stumble across these all together in one go. These are like impossible. If you look on, just give you an example. If you look on Discogs, this 1,300 people want it. There's no copies for sale, and only 52 people have it. So that shows you, when you realize, and 52 people have it, they didn't make many of them. They would have just done a little pressing run, so it could have been played out in the clubs in Detroit.
And if 50 people on Discogs have it, it doesn't mean that 52 people have it. You know that, because they are also sometimes for database purposes. And
it does.
You know what just comes to my mind? If you also consider the value of some of those way earlier Soul 7 inches, it's insane. And this is not similar music.
You're right.
Yeah.
The reason it's a 7, it comes from that era. You think Detroit soul, Northern soul, which was big here, but it was all 7s. So you think in the clubs they'll put 7 out, and it's basically because what he went on to do. After this, this record's amazing, by the way, and it really does sort of set a sort of you hear the sort of threads of Kraftwerk in it and stuff, and what they were listening to and what they were trying to gel together. And this was the very start of it. And then he went on to set up Metroplex. You got No UFOs, and then he became, a fame. He's called the Godfather, basically, of techno. So he was right there at the start. And I remember I got all these well before the internet was anywhere where you would find records. This is about.
Is it also his first record, or is it his first record in that style?
It's his very first record that he did, that he put out. Yeah. Although I've got to mention it's Warren Atkins, but there's also Rick Davis. I think Richard Davis is important to mention as well because he was involved. But what Warren Atkins was sort of seen as the sort of because Warren Atkins went on to become one of the big players of Detroit, so of the techno world. So I just think I love going back to the sort of the origins, yeah. And I remember when I found when you find something like this and you're like, I can't believe I managed to get my hands on one. It's like it's one of those.
Imagine what this. I would not say that this record opens the whole genre, but it was the starting point of a genre, and this is quite something.
You've got to look at. You're totally right, Michael, because you sort of look at everything's got to start somewhere, yeah. But you can point it to certain things, and this is a prime example of that. This is the prime example, and I love looking back to those sort of records, and that's when I was digging through the boxes. I thought, right, I'm going to put one or two of these up because I sort of see them as really important records that came out. And another one while I'm on this subject, is this one, which I also put up. Now, this is like the very first record on retro. Well, actually, no, sorry, it's not the first record on Retroactive, but it's a very early record on Retroactive, and it's extremely rare. They only made.
Are we talking a 12-inch here? Because I see.
This is a 12-inch. Yeah, so we're talking. We've actually moved quite far on now. We've moved 9 years later, so we're actually in 1990 now. 1990. So we got 81 there. Now we moved to 1990. Now this record is very special because it's the first appearance of some very important. It's the first appearance of Underground Resistance, who are one of the sort of big. If you look at Underground Resistance, they're so important as part of that whole Detroit techno scene and the ethos of it and what it's about. And they've also made some of the very best tracks like Final Frontier, run by a guy called Mad Mike, he was like he would never let his picture be taken, right? So he sort of achieved a bit of a sort of mythical state. He was seen as like
look at this, Dave, and this also goes through the whole scene for decades. There has been quite some with masks and right.
They wore masks. If a picture was taken of him, he would normally have a bandana or something. So it was always seen. But some of the music he made was outstanding. Yeah. But the reason I go back to this record is it was when this came out. I remember they only made of this particular version 150 copies. Right. The very first one. It was a sampler. And it's got some of the best, like this Covert Action Trap by Urban Tribe. That's in my top 5. It's got Please Stand By BFC, which is Cole Craig. And Cole Craig is probably my favorite Detroit artist. But what it has on the B side here is a very special track called The Climax. Now,
I remember.
It's a really long track, yeah, The Climax. And it's a bit of a journey. And it's very break, but with electronic sort of overtones, and it was kind of quite defining as a very early example of what came a bit later and became very trendy. I remember this was impossible to find. It was kind of people go, oh, there's a special version of this record that's got a secret track on side 2 called The Climax, and I thought, nah, I've never done it, but it took me years to find it, and then I found it, and I went, "What? It does exist, yeah." And then I eventually managed. Once I knew, I managed to then get. I've got like. I think I showed them before. I had like 5 copies. Yeah, I managed to get them all. But well, I didn't get all. I've got 5 copies of the 150. So there's another 145 out there somewhere. But I thought I wanted to put that because for me, this is kind of like. That is one of my personal top grails for that type of music, you see. So
nice.
and I just love it. You know, whenever I
Did
put
you
this
put
on still.
did you put
Really
one
get
with the climax track on the shop too, Dave? Is there one on the shop?
yes, it's this one.
Wow, cool.
It's the one I'm
Oh, cool.
holding. Yeah.
Okay.
So
Oh, cool.
I wanted to put the one up that's the special one.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
I did put some other things up as well. But again, they're just things that I just think are really cool. I've shown this on the OBC before, but I had like 3, so I thought I would put up another one of these, and it's a KLXC Shelby, all for Lisa, and it's again a really great track. And he was a Chicago producer, but he put it out on Transmat Records, which is a Detroit label, and they did a little bit of crossovers like that. So he recorded on Transmat, and then Derek May recorded on his Fierce City label, a track called Wiggin, which is brilliant as well. And I do know that somewhere in the depths of my vault, I've got 2 of those as well. The thing about these is they come on this translucent green vinyl. So I can't show it here really properly, but if you hold this up to a light, a bit like the Joy Division, you know, with the
like the Joy Division. No, this time in green.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but this is in green. It's sort of got green veins going on and stuff, and there's a really that's a very seminal track, that, and it's very, I would say for me, this is one of the best. You know, Transmat was a great label, and it's got some amazing music on it, but this is certainly one of the best ones. Yeah. So again, I thought
what year are we talking here, Dave? What year
this would be 19. This is 1989. This one.
Okay.
So we are talking. You know, that last one I showed was 1990. This is 89. So we're looking at, again, it's this late 80s, early 90s period, but which we always seem to return to, Michael, don't we? It seems to be that area where there was so much creativity going on in all styles, you know. So there's a lot of great records to be found around this time.
True.
Yeah. And then there's another Transmat I put up as well, which is a Derek May one, and one last thing that I put up, because I had a great day listening to all of these. It's been good fun. I had 2 copies of the Black Dog, and I know I talked about this one. Look at the cover on that.
Yeah, wonderful.
I mean, the Black Dog will probably, you know, along with B12 I've covered in the early Warp. You know, Black Dog, obviously Warp did their Bites album. So, you know, they were part of the Artificial Intelligence series, but Black Dog went early, like we talked before, they went earlier than that. But this album, you know, this Temple of Transparent Balls album is super. And it was on General Production Recordings. It's a double album. And it's with the early ones, what they did, and this is the thing that's hard to get as well. And you know, I love an extra.
This is so important to you and to all of us now, because you
I just love it. I love an unused.
Wow, super. Yeah.
You know, no blue tack on the back or anything.
Yeah, wonderful.
It's just been sitting in the sleeve. So
yeah. Nice.
And they, you know, again, like the first Artificial Intelligence one, they had a poster in, Black Dog poster inside. And this album, I think, I can't remember I think it's 93. Yeah, 93 this came out. So we're getting a little bit later there. So yeah, some nice, you know, there's some heavily curated records going on at the moment. And I've been really enjoying sort of the whole trip down memory lane, Michael, checking all these out.
Memory lane. And you know what's so sad? No, it's not sad. But what sometimes the memory lane goes longer and longer. It's quite a long road by now, huh?
Hey. And it's only going to get longer. Until maybe it gets shorter because we start forgetting. You know? But yeah, so
Dave,
anyway,
what are you drinking tonight?
Hold on. What have I done with the can? I'm treating myself to a little Neon Raptor.
We haven't seen this so far. This is a new one, right?
No, this is another stout, you know, so this is a barrel aged. Yeah. Peanut butter.
And again with the peanut butter. Okay.
And chocolate and caramel imperial stout. Yeah.
Dave, in the 80s, the early 80s, you would have gone to jail for this beer in Germany.
Really? Because it why? Because it's not.
I'm quite sure. Das deutsche Reinheitsgebot.
It's not a big stein sort of flowing with beer over the top, is it? It's kind of. I mean, you know, it's when you listen to the name of it, it kind of sounds like it might be a bit sickly, but it's not at all. It's actually really, really got lots of complex flavors going on. Quite say it's lovely. A really, really nice beer.
One Englishman to another Englishman. Where do you get it?
So this was ordered. I've got a very good friend of mine, Phil, who's a beer snob like me, and he ordered these directly Neon Raptor website. Yeah, and you can go there and order mad beers from them. They're like this, and a lot of these sort of small independent craft breweries now, they you can just order online from them directly. So sometimes, you know, when we see something interesting, we'll put a little package together.
This is a wonderful development, not only with the beer, also with whiskey, gin, cognac. It's wonderful. Yeah. This development with the small, high class. I mean, Mensch and me, we don't want to talk about.
No, I want to. Well, really, did you really you got busy?
Yeah, we got deep into my stash of good booze.
Oh wow! I want to see that sometime, Michael. It sounds interesting.
You're always welcome. You know that.
And then playing records, obviously. Well, I mean, it's a perfect combination, isn't it?
It would be.
That's why
people do it for sure. It's long overdue.
It is. So we'll have to make that a date sometime. So, oh yeah. So I'm amazed that Manch managed to get back to New York City. Do you know what I mean? After that.
Is that correct when I say, as a non-native speaker, that Mensch was loaded, or is that strange when I say it that way?
I suppose you could say that. Yeah, I suppose that's one. It's not. I don't think it's strange, but okay. Yeah, I suppose he was on. Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
I like that. Records and booze go well together. Do you think? Yes, they go well together. Sometimes a little bit. Sometimes a little bit too well.
Yeah, you got to start being careful when you've had a few too many, and maybe you're digging into some of those rare OGs, Michael, and putting them on. You know.
No, that's not the point. But you don't find the right time to stop. Yes. And then all of a sudden, your wife is next to you and says, "Michael, it's 4 o'clock in the morning."
Or she might come down to start making breakfast. Then you know you're really in trouble.
You really overdid it this time.
Yeah. Yes. And if you get to the point where the birds are singing, you know you're in trouble.
Oh, okay. Loaded might be more in US phrase than UK. I think in UK you would say splendid, right? You always say splendid.
Loaded. I see. I know what you're getting at. Yeah, I suppose there's sort of different terminologies, but yes. Anyway, cheers everybody. It's really good to see everybody on the Sunday night. Yeah. There we go. So that was my little just electronic, just to show some things that I was looking at and wanted to talk about and give some context. So there you go. I'm going to move the next sort of section. I'm going to go back to classical again. So I know we've said what we're going to do, but I wanted to look at some really super. That's a good Joe. Hey Joe, that's I like that album, Loaded Velvet Underground. Good one.
Yeah, because Hey Joe and me, we are really waiting for the Loaded Analog Productions Atlantic 75. We are waiting for this Loaded, Joe and me.
I've got an OG of that hiding around here somewhere, actually.
I'll put it up to show.
Cool. So what I'm going to talk about quickly, I've been getting into I've got some really nice classical Columbia test pressings of stereos. Yeah. I'm also going to just have a little look at some what are ludicrously rare stereos, but we're going to look at the mono versions. Now I've got one particular one which I'm going to show you, and I've just, this is so hard to get hold of. Yeah. This is the Beethoven 9th Symphony. Yeah.
Okay.
with George Zell and the Cleveland Orchestra. So it's the Beethoven Ninth, the famous choral symphony. You know, his you know, the famous symphony of Beethoven, the big symphony. And this, so now there's a Columbia SAS stereo version of this. It's a 2-disc set, yeah. And there is a Columbia SAS. Now that Columbia SAS, if I were to have an NM set of it, would sell for around €8,000, right?
In stereo.
In stereo.
That's the SAX, right? Because it's stereo. Okay.
So the label I talk, you know, the blue and silver, the blue and or turquoise and silver, some people call it. You know the label because I've shown it before. So there is a 2-disc set, same cover artwork, by the way. It looks like this, same thing, but stereo. It's €8,000 for an NM1. You know, it's got the large stereo up here. Yeah.
Yeah.
Seriously rare set of records. It's one of these ones that has it's sort of skyrocketed. There's a few.
So we are we are in Coogan regions now, right?
Yes, yeah, you're right. The Kogan
is
yeah. Kogan is a good example because Kogan is the same on the SAX with the blue silver. So you know, like the Beethoven is the Beethoven is the most expensive. You know, OGs of that can go even over €10,000 for a pristine example.
Wow.
But the Zell, there's others on that range that, you know, and this is an example. But the mono, you see, now I've only in 30 years seen another mono set once. So the mono is very rare. Yeah. And I was lucky. Look, I managed to get hold of a set. Now, the difference in price is remarkable. So €8,000 for a stereo. Now, normally what you do is the adjustment to a mono set, just because people in the club, they tend to collect stereos. You know, they want the big stereo records, but you know how I feel about I love mono records, yeah. And I think it's a great way to potentially get hold of recordings that, you know, you don't necessarily want to be spending €8,000 on this unless you're really deep into, you know, that rabbit hole of this. Yeah, then okay. And
you know, really have to like it.
Maybe you've won the lottery or something. You think, right, I'm buying it now. But mono, so the way it tends to work with classical is that if there is a mono equivalent of a stereo, it tends to be somewhere between 10% and 20% of the stereo price. So you can go, something that was like 8,000 will suddenly be 600 to 800. Yeah, that's the difference. Now, by the time you get, you know, monos when they first came out, maybe some of the quality wasn't as good. There's also various issues to do with equalization curves because before they standardized IRAA, the different companies use different equalization curves. So sometimes you can put something on and you might not be getting the best out of it. But by the time you get to here, so this is, it must be 63, actually. Is it 63? I think it's 63. Or actually, no, hold on. 62. Anyway, we're in the right area. You know, so we've now, you know, mono started in 1950, in the UK. So they started putting the first mono record. So we're already over a decade later. The monos that were coming out then, this are brilliant. Yeah, so
I can imagine,
it's brilliant. Yeah, they've really got it down to a T, and I've got great examples. I'll show you. Yeah.
Wait, before you go on, I have one question, because usually when it comes to this, stereo is more expensive than mono, and other general rules. There is always an exception. Is there an exception when a mono is more valuable than a stereo? Is there an example?
Not really. If there's a stereo equivalent, then it tends not to be. But when there is just a mono, then the mono it commands its own price. I think you will see more closure between the mono and stereo. You know, because I've watched this for years. Yeah, I mean, I remember when mono it's got a bit closer. You know, but I remember when monos were dirt cheap. You know, because there'll be a stereo and then the mono would be a real sort of small fraction. But people now understand a bit more about what's rare and what's really wanted. And the reason, like for example, This Is Rare, is because it didn't last in the catalog very long, right? You know,
Okay.
there's other examples. There's other examples of stereos. I'll say Kogan, for example. So, you know, the Beethoven, they only did the first label version, and then they stopped. You know, when I talk about the catalog, is so if a record's popular, they'll keep pressing it. Yeah. So some other records, so say like the Tchaikovsky Kogan. The Tchaikovsky Kogan actually made it to the next label. So the red and black, it moved from the blue and silver to the red and black. Now the red and black came in at least 2 years later. So it meant that that was still in the catalog, still being pressed. Yeah. So there were more copies out there, but there were records that didn't last as long. And the reason This Is Rare is because I don't reckon they made very many of them. Yeah. Not like, you know, Otto Klemperer did the 9. Yeah. It's SAX 227677. That's really, there's loads of those out there. You know, that also made it to the next label. Yeah. And that was really popular. So it tends to be the lesser popular ones. So like the Beethoven Kogan is very rare.
Dave,
but the
like always, the lesser popular stuff at the time, when it gains momentum and legacy,
yeah, it does. And
really expensive.
You've got the Beethoven Kogan, like ludicrous, so, you know, big 10,000 euros. The Oistrakh Kogan, they made low, you know, that you see one of those a month. Yeah. The first label. They also made a second label that it even made it to the third label, which is the Magic Note postage stamp. So it meant it was running the catalog for maybe 8 years. Yeah, they kept pressing it. Whereas other ones, it might have only lasted a year, and then they or even less, even months, and then they went, okay, no, it's, you know, it's and it's interesting.
And those are the most valuable ones, right?
They become like that, particularly when over time you realise that particular performances are amazing. Yeah. And George Zell has become very, very popular. You know, I remember when he wasn't so, you know, he wasn't as collectible. He's become really collectible. And that's been quite led by, you know, the Far Eastern market, China, South Korea, Japan, have helped push that, you know, because they're the ones that really, you know, they're the guys that will lay out on a stereo of this. You know, I mean, in China, if you have a stereo of this, they'll just take it straight. They won't even flinch at spending 8,000 euros on a stereo. So that's why I wanted to show this, just to show that, look, it's able to achieve a very rare, very special record at a much cheaper price. I'm going to put this in the shop this week sometime, yeah? And just get something very special, which you won't, you know, this, like, last time I saw this was 8 years ago, yeah? 8 years ago. So it's kind of nice to see one again. And this, to show some, I love mono. So like this, I'm just literally pulled these off my shelf. You know, I'm just going to show them and say like this. So Andre Clayton's doing Debussy. Yeah, a stereo of this is about, say, 1,500 euros. So a mono would be much. Yeah, we're talking 10 to 20% of the stereo price. And again, you know, beautiful cover, very, very rare record. This. And, you know, there's loads of examples. And I really want to sort of open up this whole world because, you know, like this, I mean, I've only ever seen a stereo copy of this record. This is an HOD ASD. Yeah. This is the mono, the ALP. So ASD stereo, ALP is mono. You know, the stereo of this is maybe 800 euros. So a mono of this may be 150 euros. So that's just the range we're looking at.
Yeah. Interesting.
It's a great way to get hold of
this really music, of those original,
really high quality, amazingly produced records, but not get into that. You know, we all love stereo. You know, stereo is wonderful, but
I don't know when it comes to the especially when it comes to the chamber music.
Yeah,
the mono sometimes is overwhelming.
I think generally the rule, you know, there are some benefits with stereo when you're talking about orchestral music because you have the sound stage from the left to the right. But when you get to chamber, so quartets, sonatas, you know, violin, cello, piano, small works music, you know, if you think that how that music would be presented in a small hall or something, mono is perfect for it. You don't need a huge sound stage for that. You know, the directness of mono can actually very much lend itself to that type of music more so that it can engage you more. So, and I've definitely, you know, I've you know, I've heard, you know, all these mad classical records, all of them. And I do believe now that the mono, you know, some of those monos, and particularly when we get to these ones, they're just super. Yeah. So hey, that's my OBC under. You know, this is exclusive advice to everyone. Yeah. But I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll just show you because I was digging. I got all these really cool test pressings. I know that I showed them before, but I've got some. I've been digging through finding the sleeve because sometimes with the test pressings there'll be bunches of sleeves separate to the actual records, and it's like putting a puzzle together. Yeah. But here's like good. This is great. Look, I've got, and also if you remember, I've mentioned before that what EMI would do is that they would put stereo test pressings inside mono sleeves, and this is prime example. So we got another George Zell here doing Mozart, right? Again, quite a trendy record. You know, I think maybe a stereo version this would be upwards of €800. Now this is just a single-sided test pressing of one of the discs. So this is just the Oxford Symphony, so it's only one side. And again, you would see examples of that whereby you would only get one side of the disc as a test. Yeah, I mean, obviously there'll be a test pressing of the other part as well. But some, you know, I've had this all the time. Sometimes you'll get one disc, sometimes you get both. It's literally however they were knocking them out of the factory at the time. But yeah, it's kind of nice to get that. And there's some,
and with the notes on this at the sleeve, right?
With the notes as well is lovely. You know, you've got all the, I'll show you what they did. So you can read it up here. So look, you can see there you've got the matrices. So you've got the YX1002. That's the tape reference and also the side reference. Yeah. So that'll be one side of the disc. Then you've got the G below. So that would be, you know, as we know from the matrix, EMIs use Grammophon Ltd as their code. So this will be a 1G, 1G. It's a test pressing. It'll be the very first mother, very first stamper. So this will be a 1G, 1G. It's dated as well. They always date stamped. There, you know, you can see it's a May supplement. Actually, no, sorry, is it March? It says March there. Look, 25th of March. Can't quite see the year. It's probably 1961, something like that. And then there's always some notes. Oh, look, we have a rejected one. Rejected pressing. Okay, bands 1 and 2. Bands 3 and 4, surface defects. Well, I'm going to judge that for myself tomorrow. Seriously, but sometimes it's, you know, I mean, this means that this will be a unique stamper, because if it was rejected, they would have then made another. Yeah?
Of course.
It means this will be totally unique. And I'll tell you something, I've seen a fair few of these, and sometimes they sound brilliant. Yeah. So I'm going to give that a go and see what those defects are they're talking about. But hey, that for me, that is fun. Yeah,
Dave, it's so amazing. You go deeper and deeper and deeper. I just love it. I just love it.
Another unique, you know, and there's loads. I mean, some of the covers on these. I mean, this is a brilliant one. So look, I've got this, the Debussy, with Charles Rosen, and again, look, mono jacket's amazing. Yeah, amazing jacket. And Charles Rosen was a wonderful pianist. He came a little bit later into the Columbia catalog, and we'll just have a look again. Look, we've got the code, so let's have a little look what we've got going up here. Get that in. There we go. Oh, so we got a bit, yeah. So that the matrix is the BC1242. Then I love all the little notes that you have to sort of work it out. So we got 21. Is that a 963? Debussy Etudes. What's going on? Oh, Quita Chavez. So that's the collection. That's probably her signature there, because she was the I told you, the editor of the Grammophon, and a few years, but also she worked at Decca, so she probably just put her name on there to let people know that it was her copy. Nice. And again, a lovely test pressing. And what they did with the stereos, Columbia, they always had this same white and black label, whether it be for mono or stereo. But with the stereos, they would do a little purple ink stamp, as you can see there.
Oh, we can see them. Yeah.
So if it's a stereo, they would stamp it, and you can always tell. You can always tell mono and stereo from the matrix references as well. But hey, they try to make it a little bit easier for us, at least. The problem is when you get one of those and there's no information.
Yeah,
then you have to really You have to really sort of start digging very deep. Yeah, this one's very nice as well. The Kroll Quartet. I mean, this is an example of an amazing quartet. Very rare. They did very few records, but there's two quartets on Columbia: the Kroll Quartet and the Drolk Quartet.
I haven't heard of them. They're
top end quartet, yeah. And this is doing the Beethoven String Quartet number 11. I think that's the only. Again, we've only got one disc with this one. And oh look, see, this is one I had to work out because didn't say what it was.
Oh, okay.
I could see it was a stereo.
Again, a single-sided record, or
yeah, this was single-sided, but there was no information. Yeah, so what I had to do there, basically what I did is listen to it, and then I worked out what it was, so I could work out what the music was. And then I knew it was a Columbia stereo, so then I would look to see, and I then pieced it together that it was that. So yeah, that's quite rare. I mean, the original of this, the actual stereo issue of this is probably about 500-600 euros.
Wow,
something like that. Now, test pressings, so you understand, test pressings can go for more than the original. I mean, depending on what it is, if it's something that's really wanted, the market for test pressings could go quite extreme sometimes. If it's something very special, like for example, if a test pressing of the Beethoven Kogan came up, I wouldn't be surprised if it hit around the upwards of 12,000, maybe to 15,000 euros. It will be more than the normal one.
Okay. Yeah, it's even rarer, right? Right. Have you ever gotten one?
No, I mean, I've seen. I've been fortunate. I have seen lots of test pressing over, many years, but I've never seen a test pressing of that. I have had a test pressing a long time ago, the Tchaikovsky, but that's the only Kogan that I've had in that format. They're out there. I mean, test pressings were made of every record. They would have made at least. I think typically they would make somewhere in the range of 5 to 10 test pressings. Something like that. Just a small handful, because just for assessment.
That is really rare then. Wow.
Oh yeah, they're all test pressings. And EMI test pressings are great. Some people have got a bit of a funny thing about them because they think, you can see that they are for reviewing, for checking, and then decisions are made on whether to use that particular stamper, that lacquer, what have you, or whether it needs to be redone. So decisions are made at that point, but they are rare. And I personally, for me, I think they sound fantastic. So yes, beer.
Yes.
Hope everyone's enjoying their Sunday evening classical. It's so classical.
Extravaganza.
You know what I mean? It's such a Sunday thing.
But I still see the tourism of Boards of Canada behind you.
Oh yeah, I was talking with Stunty about that earlier because we were discussing whether it was a bootleg or not. Which it's important to get into these details of things. Yeah, so because they only made 100 copies of that, and so we got into
a crazy one. Yeah.
It is definitely. We worked out it is the real thing. It's a proper version of it because it came out in 1995, and then I think Warp did their reissue of it about in early 2000s, 2002, something like that. But yeah, that was the first one. Yeah.
Wow.
And also because there's you look at the pressing details, and you can see it says Damon, which is a well-known pressing plant.
So this is a serious record too.
That's a serious record, yeah. For the Balls of Canada completists, that's like
hardcore fans. That's tough to get. Almost impossible to get.
Yeah. Pretty serious business, yeah. People, it's the same with. It's funny with electronic music. There's certain records, that go for I say extortionate. I mean, they go for serious money, and Warp and they're very good at playing around with the whole marketing around these things. And like there's these stories about records, they would make 5 copies, and then what they would do, was it that Aphex Twin, I think, or actually was it Balls did it before Tomorrow's Harvest came out, they put like 5 records in various they made 5 copies and put them in different record shops in the country. And then, you know, like there's one in, I think in the Record and Music Exchange, someone would go through and then they would find this thing, and then there was a code, you know, you had to decipher what it was, and then when you found out it was balls, it was suddenly 6,000 euros, you know.
I you're right, Dave, but yeah, I mean, why not? In a way, why not? In a way, it's also funny, right? Because it's not that they say, okay, we do 5 copies and here you can have it for 6,000. They don't do this, and that's
they put them out there.
Exactly, and so they give everyone the same chance to get it, and that's okay in a way. Yeah.
And imagine being the person to find one of those. I mean, they went, you know, it was unbelievable. But I mean, I know Balls, just going back to them, a lot of their early material was all on cassette tape, you know. So there's all these sort of albums they did on cassette, which there's pictures of them, but you know, have I ever seen one in the flesh? No, but they are out there somewhere. A few, I don't know how many they made. I mean,
probably the people who have them keep them, right?
Yeah, they probably just gave them to their friends, and they got
something like that. Yeah.
We go back to the distribution, like we look at those first Detroit records. Yeah. It was just limited, you know. It was just within their environment that these things came out. They didn't have any international distribution of anything like that. Not in those early days, anyway. So, and it would have been the same with Boards, really, until they became global electronic superstars.
We can't wait for the new album, right? And see them for the first time on the #1 spot in sales. This would happen, I'm sure.
Right. So, Michael, I don't want you to feel sort of left out in any way. So I thought I want to do some DG. Yeah.
Deutsche Grammophon.
I want to look at one of your, you know, your famous German exports. Yeah. Around the world.
Yeah.
And a great label, and a great quality. Yeah. Great, you know, so I'm going to talk about stereos now specifically, because good quality Deutsche Grammophon stereos are, once you know the things to look for, they're quite easy to spot. So what the trade, I'll show, this is actually a sample one. So I'm going to start with this to show you, because DG, they did do sample records as well, and they would tend to have a little sticker on like this. But and also interestingly with DG, I think most of the sample ones I've seen have always come in, the stereos have actually come in stereo jackets, which is different to EMI, because most stereo samples or test pressings I've seen with EMI come in mono jackets. But hey, we're all different. So it's got a different label now. You know, the classic DG label is yellow and blue, with a ring of tulips right around the outside of it. That's like the classic label. But quite nice just to look at what a test pressing looks like. You see, so it's white and black. And you can see at the top there, it says sample copy, not for sale. And look, you can see it. In fact, you look in the wax there, the dead wax.
First time in my life I see a Deutsche Grammophon test pressing.
Really? Is that the first time? Well, there you go.
First time for me. Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen a few, and they do have this white label, which again, the test pressings are quite rare. This came in a review again. I think this was in the Kita Chavez collection, so she had a lot of sample records. I was like, oh look, there's a DG sample. But I'm going to show you now. I wanted to show you that first. So we're going to look at the classic DG stereo, right? And here's a good example, right? So this is a classic.
Look at the jacket, Dave. Look, this is amazing. Look at it. I love it.
Lovely, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah. Now, this is what I would call a classic DG stereo. Probably quite early. Let me have a little look. Hold on, I just got to put the light on that. The date, right? We're talking September 1960. Now, the criteria for an early stereo. So all early DGs.
Yeah. With the red stereo.
The red stereo in the middle. Well,
so the other stereo we see, is it a sticker or what is it, Dave?
Yeah. So a lot of the very early ones would have an additional sticker as well saying stereo compatible. Now, when I say that they all have this red, I'm not quite telling the truth there, because there's also ones that have this in yellow and black, but they have this sticker. So there's kind of some combinations, but as a general rule, all early stereo DGs have that, yeah. And the very early ones have this sticker as well. It's only the very early ones that use this additional sticker, and then they just started doing this on its own. Right,
Dave, allow me one question. When you told us that when it comes to the stereo records, classical early stereo, they have been sold in very exclusive shops, Harrods and stuff like that.
They're a lot more expensive, but
yes, it was same with the Deutsche Grammophon, or different?
I think, don't quote me on this, Michael, but I think you would find it was exactly the same, because I think when these first came out, stereo equipment was very new. You had to be rich to, so suddenly you needed, you had a mono amp. Suddenly you needed to buy another amp, so you had 2 channels, right? And then you needed a preamp that could handle this, yeah. So stereo was new, yeah.
And probably a different cartridge too, right?
Well, look, you needed a stereo pickup. So a mono pickup, it tracks vertically, whereas a stereo pickup tracks but it also it does left and right, so it tracks totally differently. So you would have needed to upgrade your equipment to a stereo cartridge, a preamp that could handle it. You needed both channels, so people have 1 speaker for a mono, suddenly you needed 2 speakers for the left and the right.
Right.
I love a mono setup where you've just got 1 speaker, 1 turntable, and an amp, and you just play mono. It's just great, yeah. But anyway, when these came out, they would have been, So Justin, you're right. They do, yeah. It's important to point this out, because remember we talk about dating of jackets, yeah.
Yes.
Now, like we did with the Decca SXLs that have dates on the bottom flip back, the DGs. All their jackets are dated in the bottom corner. Well, I say most of them are. A lot of the early ones, and as you can see there, it says 9/60. So we're talking September 1960. So it'll give you, and they changed the date, so you can actually see. It was really good, because you could actually see when your record came from, and if this record came out earlier, then you can see you got one from a few months later.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So they actually did it to that detail so you can actually pinpoint when basically by the sleeve. Now, I'm just going to show you. I think it's important just to go to look at the record, and also the inner sleeve. Now, DG inner sleeves always, the early ones always had this text on. Yeah. So they're really well made as well. Actually, they're really nice quality.
One question for the jacket: are they more sturdy than the British ones, or same?
They're about they're a little bit flimsy. They're like the early Deckers. They're not like they're not like the HMVs. So not like the MI later ones that are on thick card. They're like the earlier. They're like the early the Decca SXL 2000s, and also the very early EMIs that have this, the thin type. So they are quite thin, but they're. Look. This is a very old record, and the jacket's in pretty good shape, really. So, I think the thing we find with classical is that people that bought these sort of high quality classical records looked after them. Yeah. They're not the same. Yeah. If you were buying these, you're not going to be chucking them around the room, right? Yeah. They were looked after. And they were kind of, classical was. You're not going to get a George Zell blue and silver and go frisbee it, are you? That would be a disaster. Imagine having that record and then you had it in your hand and you dropped it or something. People. Exactly. I'll tell you, I've damaged. I'm really good with records, but I've got a couple of horror stories. Yeah.
Who hasn't, Dave? Who handles records on a regular basis and hasn't damaged a record? I have.
One was so bad, Michael, I nearly threw up. It was that bad. Yeah. You have to have, we all have to have that, because it teaches you to be more.
You know what happened? I tell you my story, my worst story. Mint copy, mezzanine, original. You know the weight from the Einstein?
Right.
Fell off my hand on the record, yes.
No.
Yes. Yes.
Do you know when you do something like the first thing you do is you get the record, and then you get a lot, and you go like this. What have I done? You know, and then
exactly. What have I done? Yeah.
And then you look and you see what you've done, and you go, "No, I've done that." I mean, I remember once I had a Fela Kuti record.
Dave, Justin now wants the whole truth and all facts. How expensive was the record?
Oh, it was a £3,000 classical record. Yeah.
Shit happens. Shit happens.
Hey, I had it on a cleaning machine, and a metal fragment I hadn't seen got into where the vacuum was, and it scored a perfect circle on the disc surface. Yeah, which made it totally.
At least it was perfect. At least it was perfect.
Well, the circle was perfect. Yeah. Oh, thanks, Michael. That makes me feel. You know, you're bringing it all back to me now. And that was about about 18 years ago when I did that. And I still have horror. I'm visualizing it now in my head. You know, I remember turning it around. I went, what's happened? And I could see it.
That can ruin your day, right? That can ruin your day for sure.
But it does. You know, I play. You know, and I know we talk about this. You know, I think, you know, we all must play our records. Yeah, regardless of how much. Don't. You know. Put it up there and then go. I can never look. You know. Look, don't. No, play them.
Play them, exactly. Otherwise, where's the fun in it? And you know, in that regard, I think I have the perfect sentence to stop this terrible topic. No risk, no fun.
It's all about the balance, and you're going to have a night. You're going to have, you know, we're all going to have it. It happens. Yeah. I just saw another one. I had this lovely Fela Kuti record, Nigerian original. Not a really early one. It was a later one, but it was beautiful condition. Yeah, stunning, like perfect. And me and my friends, we were like listening to Fela, and I had it in my hand. I had a few, and suddenly I just sort of dropped it, and it went right down the back of my hi-fi, down the wall where all the cables were.
Of course. And then the dog came in, jumped on the record. The mother of your wife came in, fell on the...
And it gone down. I thought, no, because, you know, at the back of equipment, there's all stuff, you know, cable, you know, stuff sticking out, cables going between. And I think, that's going to be... And I remember picking it up from the back, sort of reaching up. And, you know, it was dusty at the bottom because it hit the floor, and there was dust around the back of the hi-fi. And I looked at it, and I just saw all these, like, and I went, I can't believe I've done that. The sleeve was pristine as well. I kept the sleeve, but when I see it now, when I see it, it reminds you to be vigilant and be careful. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's always in your throat. Those things are always here. So, yeah.
You know, it's so funny. You can see, you know, when people are handling really expensive records, and they're like, it's like, you know, I try to be very, you know, I'm not. I'll hold a record. You know, I think it can be worse when you try to be careful.
Yes, that's true. That's
true. You know what I mean? You can't be like, like that. That's worse. You have to just be normal.
Yeah.
Be normal. Like you're just put. You know, it's a record. Yeah. So don't freak out, because doing that, I think, can just make things. You know, that
way worse and way more dangerous. I totally agree on that.
I love this little topic we've just done there, because it's important, isn't it? It's not something we've really talked about.
The worst things that can happen.
I think, you know, and it just shows we're all fallible at the end of the day, right?
And things happen.
Even the best of it.
It does.
Anyway, look, back to I don't want to
back to the topic. Sorry.
We're going to do some DG, because otherwise I won't feel we've covered the topic enough. Yeah. Okay. So the classic DG label, right? So this is the first sort of the classic stereo label. So it's a yellow with blue. They're called tulips around the edge there, so you can see around the perimeter. And the way that you tell a very first edition, it has the word. In fact, Michael, you better read it. It's at the top right there. Alle Hersteller.
It's not.
How do you say it properly?
Konzert für Klavier und Orchester Nummer
No,
33.
so Michael, sorry, if you look at the top, this side here, there's a bit of text at the very start around the perimeter. Alle Hersteller.
I'm not able to read this. I'm totally sorry. It's not sharp enough. I'm sorry.
Well,
I'm
basically,
sorry.
that's what it says, yeah? And there's two versions of the label. The early ones all have that text around the perimeter.
Okay.
And then the later ones say made in Germany, yeah?
Okay.
So that's how you tell a very early stereo. So there's two ranges. There's the sort of 138. You can see the catalog number there, 138. They did a few different ranges. There's 136, 138, 139. The 138s are all early. The 136s are early. The 139s, they started to change the label, but even the early 139s, they all have that initial text at the top there, and they all have the blue tulips around it. So that's how
and they all have one thing they don't have, which is quite interesting for a German. They don't have this GEMA, you know.
Oh, is that like a sort of license?
Exactly.
So that's almost like is it like a copyright royalty thing, or like
exactly when the state got its hands on the rights and exactly, and they don't
have that actually.
Yeah,
there's sort of no indicator on there of that type. Maybe it's on the sleeve or something, but yeah. So look, that's how you tell a classic DG. And I'll just show. I've got a little pile here that I dug out. This just because some of the sleeves are really beautiful on these. I'll do a Thomas. Hold on, here we go.
Yeah, do a Thomas. Look, wonderful.
That's beautiful, that one, isn't it?
Wonderful.
Really, I'll tell you something. The colours are very vivid.
Yeah.
On these DJs. Look at this. That's lovely, actually. Look, that's the Schubert, the Trout Quintet.
Yeah, this I can imagine, Dave. This is very expensive because correct me if I'm wrong.
See this pianist.
Chamber music equals expensive. Yeah.
So this is nice, and the Schubert Trout is very highly regarded. Very that's a very nice example of that. You know, great performance. So yeah, but as you can see, that there's consistency. Sometimes they would do actual images like this of the artists themselves. So there we go, and again, lovely. By the way, this number here, that's the cataloguing of the person's collection that it came from. That was actually a common thing as well.
Typical for a collector, right? Typical for a serious collector at the time.
Yeah. We got Herbert von Karajan. Yeah.
I just wanted to say, we know this guy, don't we?
But he meant business. Look at him pointing.
Yeah, he meant business for sure.
Don't muck about. Yeah. He had a serious reputation, and that's the Tchaikovsky piano concerto. But you can see there the consistencies of the style of the.
But Dave, I have to criticize you for the very, very first time. For a Thomas, you are very, very slow.
Do you know what? I think what I might do, I might go and do some little practice sessions outside of this, and then what I'll do is I'll come back and suddenly I'll be like that. I need to, like, even Thomas pulled me up on it on that last stream, saying too slow. At least he's honest.
He did, right?
Yeah, so I know I've got to do.
Now that you say it, he did. Yeah.
Crazy. Yeah. Anyway, yeah. So look, that's it. We done a little DG session. So hey,
nice one, beautiful one. Will we see some of those stereos in the shop too?
Yeah. In fact, I probably that little pile here.
Nice.
Don't go sticks out. So all of these I'll put up, because they're nice. They're in lovely condition. They're all review copies, so they're just really, really sweet. So
they are from your collection, spare copies, or where did you?
No, these have been. I've had these again for a few years, but they came in a big review collection I bought. I've got other ones, but I'm gonna let them. I just got to see what Justin's saying here. You're right. In fact, the way to do it properly is we'll have to get Thomas to hold a beer and then do his I call it his deck of cards, because he's always.
And of course, you need the Neuralink, because Thomas' advantage is the Neuralink, the Tesla.
That's true, hey Joe. You're right. Wow.
Dave, another Sunday evening with you.
Yep.
It was splendid.
It was splendid, yeah. Splendid Sunday evening for everybody. Yeah, good fun.
Thank you all.
Nice records.
Let's meet again on Wednesday.
Definitely, yeah.
Can't wait for Wednesday.
Bit of Wednesday madness, wall stuff, yeah, wall stuff
with the whole team in a way.
Yeah, very cool.
You so much. Thank you so much.
Great to see everybody, guys. Really good to see you all. Thanks.
Bye.